All right. I will start and we will generate some discussions. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhuya eva mahabaho shrinu me paramam vachah. Listen to my even more to my speech, to my supreme word. Yatteham priyamanaya vakshyami. What I will tell you, to you, beloved, loved by me, hitakam yeya, desiring the highest or hitam can be also hitakam yeya. Hita is something which is established, which is true. Sri Aurobindo translates in this way: the blessed Lord said, again, Almighty, armed, hearken to my supreme word, that I will speak to thee from my will, for thy soul's good, priyamanaya, to you, beloved, literally. Now that thy heart is taking delight in me, hitakam yaya, by the desire of the established, literally. And here he gives two footnotes. Let us look into them. First is again, this bhuya, more. The Divine Avatar declares in a brief reiteration of the upshot of all that he has been saying, and that this and no other is his supreme word, which he had promised to reveal. This is for bhuya, for again or more. And the second footnote is that thy heart is taking delight in me. This delight of the heart in God is the whole constituent and essence of true bhakti. There's many misprints here which I cannot really read. Bhajanti, most probably. Bhajanti priya, priti purvakam. Bhajanti priti purvakam I can deconstruct. This is put as a condition for the further development by which the final command to action comes at last to be given to the human instrument Arjuna. The supreme word of the Lord contains the declaration of a unified knowledge and bhakti as the supreme yoga. Unified knowledge and bhakti. So, many times Sri Aurobindo speaks about our problems of human psychology, that our heart and mind do not go together. Here they are unified. And that is the supreme yoga, where the heart and mind are going together. We also notice many times that there are people who are more loving people and rely on love, bhaktas, and jnanis. Jnana and bhakta, there is a constant ongoing misunderstanding between the two. Jnana, knowledge, always looks for meaning, for perfection, for absolute truth, and until it finds it, it's never satisfied. And it's also very critical to everything which is not giving it that higher vision. Bhakti is a bit different. It does not require jnana in that sense. It is more, so you can love the being without that being perfect, so to say. The perfection is not required for love. It's very, very interesting. So you can love imperfect being because one presumes the perfection of the divine in all without really knowing it. knowing it in the mind, but somehow sensing it in the heart. So in between these two, there is ongoing competition. And I noticed that many times in my life. Usually I have this problem with bhaktas because they want to, like Hare Krishna movement, for example, when they too much relying on bhakti without knowing anything, it was never enough for me. I always wanted to know, never wanted to just rely on love without knowing. But for some people it works, and works very well. So now I kind of became more humble over time. I don't have that problem. I understand this is the bhakta, he is the lover, and through love he arrives at knowledge.
I guess at a certain level, like the balance, like because the love without the purification can turn into vital propensities. So that time the knowledge can help ground. So I think
Yes,
it's very important till that like highest level, that's something, because otherwise all those abhimanas and all those things come in when the lover doesn't suit your needs.
right. It's very, very interesting what you said, and very true in a way. Yeah. That many times this love, this which has to be spiritual love, psychic love from the heart, turns to be some kind of vital preference and desire. And of course, it's because there is no purity of knowledge. So they are needed, both needed for spiritual fulfillment. You know? The heart and the mind, if they come together, these are two major constituents of our yoga, of psychic presence, and the liberation or the witness Purusha above. So the realization of witness Purusha is jnana, as Sri Aurobindo tells us. It's a self-realization of being, discovering one's own true existence or being, divine being, and the other is the heart, loving that divine. You know? And both are needed for this realization, for this yoga. And that's why we have Sri Aurobindo and the mother, both. Mother is from the heart, Sri Aurobindo from above the head. They come together. And that is the biggest problem for all. Yeah, even it was visible even in the ashram, where some disciples were following more the mother, others more Sri Aurobindo, and there was even split on those who follow mother, those who follow Sri Aurobindo. Not anymore, actually. Over time, this kind of distinction is kind of forgotten or not even discerned. Nobody has any discernment on this level. But with first disciples who were present in the time of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, that choice was there. Interestingly. And even when I arrived in Auroville, I still had that, I remember that dilemma. And when I realized, when Sri Aurobindo says that I and the mother are one and the same consciousness, for me it was kind of a shock, a pleasant shock. I had to really work on it. I had to really kind of accept it and understand it. It took me quite a long time to really realize that they are one and the same consciousness. I do not know what it tells you, but it's a big thing. Did you ever have this dilemma in your life? between Sri Aurobindo and the mother? Most probably Robert was always mother's person, so he never had this dilemma.
Yes, I think that's true, but that didn't start immediately. I remember my first introduction was through the writings of Sri Aurobindo, actually, but particularly interestingly, the little book, The Mother, which helped to open me to the mother and the Bhakti side too, which is now very strong, I think. Thank you, gratefully. But where does the third stool in the third leg of the stool for me is karma yoga too, because that gives an opportunity to use at least to use the back turn, the bhakti and the knowledge through work.
Yeah, it ties it all together, doesn't it? Really,
I think so.
as Sri Aurobindo writes about this so beautifully in the synthesis, but you through the offering, and this very much relates to the Gita, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Through offering your works, your knowledge, your devotion, it all comes together.
Yeah. And you notice that he always emphasizes this union, yeah? United knowledge and bhakti as the supreme yoga. So he has this in mind constantly to remind us what it means. Why bhakti is, well, the whole division on the Gita, you remember we discussed this already, that first karma kanda, then bhakti, then jnana yoga. So we have 3 yogas, and they are distributed in a way as our being is distributed. So we have our body, our physical being, then we have our vital and heart being, and then we have our mental. Yeah? So the head, the torso, and the basis on which we act in this world, in the body. So these 3, will, love, and knowledge, have to come together. So now we are in this love section, and it looks like it is inferior to knowledge, because it's the second section after the first: physical, then vital, then mental. Mental is heaven, physical is earth, and in between there is this which connects both. But in his view, as you remember here on page 35, he speaks about this, that truly speaking, bhakti is the conclusive part, yeah, which requires the action, the self-realization, and finally the union of both heaven and earth is reflected in bhakti. Bhakti is already a realized sense of divinity in manifestation. That's love. So it's a kind of highest result rather than the reason or the cause. It's not the cause, it's the outcome of some cause, and there are 2 causes behind. It's the will to know oneself, realization of oneself, and then love towards the divine. It is in this way that he shows us 3 parts of the Gita. And still, bhakti is in between. So the second step is jnana yoga, though it is the 3rd section of the Gita, not the second. We are now in the 2nd section of 6 chapters. And this is a puzzle, in a way. So they gave us a static overview, yes, how we are built. Maybe now I think, for the first time, maybe because the heart, the vital, so to say, connects heaven and earth. So it's this connection which makes it 2nd section in the Gita. If you remember also in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, he has these Shuddhi, Mukti, Bhukti, and Siddhi. You remember these 4. he always refers to them. So mukti is, so first is shuddhi, purification, and this is the action of will, or karma yoga, which purifies the being, which leads to mukti, self-realization, jnana, that you know your own unborn self, the witness. And then only siddhi and bhukti, or bhukti and siddhi. So then only enjoyment and perfection comes. So that bhukti as enjoyment is actually bhakti, love. Love is a full enjoyment, bliss, joy. It makes sense. All right. And then, Name viduh suraganaha prabhavam namaharshayah. Aham adirhi devanam maharshinam cha sarvashah. Neither gods in their ganas, groups, nor great rishis know me. Name viduh. Do not know my beginning, prabhavam, my origin. None of them know the origin of me. Aham adih, I am the origin, I am the beginning. Hi devanam, of all the gods, maharshinam cha sarvashah, and of all the great rishis. So I am the origin of them, so how can they know me? Neither the gods nor the great rishis know any birth of me. That he says the birth, I say the origin. Prabhavam can be appearance, birth. For I am altogether and in every way the origin of the gods and the great rishis. So there are 3 footnotes. Prabhava, birth. In every way, the origin, adih, and the origin of the gods, Devanam. Let us look into these 3 footnotes. First, Prabhava. The Gita harmonizes the pantheistic and theistic and the highest transcendental terms of our spiritual conception and spiritual experience. The divine is the unborn, eternal, the transcendental being who has no origin. So everything else has the origin. The gods, the rishis, the lower beings, the asuras, rakshasas, they all have an origin. They all come from somewhere, but not the divine, not Purushottama. And then, number 4, it is about the origin. But at the same time, the divine transcendence is not a negation, nor is it an absolute empty of all relation to the universe. All cosmic relations derive from this supreme. All cosmic existences return to it and find in it alone their true and imperishable existence. And number 5, of the gods, the god, most probably the gods, are the great undying powers and immortal personalities who consciously inform, constitute, preside over the subjective and objective forces of the cosmos. The gods are spiritual forms of the eternal and original deity who descend from him into the many processes of the world. All their own existences, nature, power, process proceeds in every way, in every principle, in its every strand, from which the truth of the transcendental ineffable in its every strand, from the truth, the transcendent ineffable. Sometimes difficult to read. You never know whether it is misprint or something. But it's clear what he wants to say. Yes? So who are these devatas? Devatas are the powers or the presences of the divine in nature, in many forms. And the whole chapter 10, is dedicated to these vibhutis. These are the vibhutis. These are the manifestations, partial manifestations of the divine in cosmos, in nature. Yeah. And then there is one more. Yo mam ajam anadim cha vetti lokamaheshwaram asamurhah sa martyeshu sarvapapaih pramuchyate. And the one who knows me as unborn and without the beginning, the Lord of the universe, asamurha, he is not bewildered among the mortals. Sarva papaih pramuchyate, he is released from all sin and evil. By all the sins he is released. Interesting, this kind of syntax, Sanskrit syntax. It is not that he is released from all the sins, but it is by all the sinful actions he is released by. And if you think about it, there is something in it. To be released by all imperfect activities or sinful activities. Because once you know him truly, there are no sinful activities anymore. It's an amazing thing to think of. Yeah? There is no sinful activity whatsoever. It can't be once you know the Purushottama, beyond everything. Even if you are fighting and from the point of view of ordinary consciousness you are totally sinful, it's not so at all. So every activity, whatever you do in this world, will be the action which is releasing you, which makes you free, because you are already fundamentally free. So there is nothing which can bind you, whatever activity. So there is no sinful or, because both and sinful and dharmic activities are both binding the personality, yeah? Not only sinful. So in that sense, it's quite interesting, this emphasis on sinful, on all the sins, by all the sins he is released. And then there will be the whole list of things which we have to go through. Yes, there are 3 footnotes again. Sri Aurobindo gives many footnotes here. Let us read them. It would be interesting to see. First is the Lord of the worlds, and the second is unbewildered, and the third is delivered. That delivered we will read. The Supreme who becomes all creation, yet infinitely transcends it, is not a will-less cause aloof from his creation. He is the mighty Lord of the worlds and peoples, and governs all, not only from within, but from above, from his supreme transcendence. It's interesting because from within this is the psychic presence, and from above is this Jivatma, yes? Or that witness which gives sanctions to the Prakriti. This is the theistic seeing of the universe. And the second one is here. Wait a minute, where is it? And second one belongs to the unbewildered, yeah? Asamudha. So all the perplexity of man's mind and action, all the stumbling, insecurity and affliction of his mind can be traced back to the groping of the bewildered cognition and violation natural to his sense obscured mortal mind in the body, sammoha. Traced back to the groping and bewildered cognition, volition, natural to the sense obscured mortal mind in the body, sammoha. Literally bewilderment, total bewilderment, sammoha. But when lie sees the divine origin of all things, when he looks steadily from the cosmic appearance to the transcendent reality and back from that reality to the appearance, he is then delivered from this bewilderment of the mind, will, heart, and senses. So this is something also from Sri Aurobindo. It's a gift here. But when lie sees the divine origin of all things, when he looks steadily from the cosmic appearance to the transcendent reality and back from that reality to the appearance, both ways he has to look. You remember we looked into Maya, divine Maya, what it means. There are two movements of Maya which had to be overcome in order for us to be free. One is looking from the psychic, other is looking from the transcendental. So both have to come together to liberate us from this bewilderment. He is then delivered from the bewilderment of the mind, will, heart, and senses. So not only one-way ticket, not only to see the transcendence for transcendental reality for ourselves as real, but from the transcendental look back down to the lower hemisphere and also to appearance, what this appearance is about, that this is the enterprise of the spirit, that this appearance is not false, that it is true from the point of view of creation, then we will be free from this bewilderment. Not only from the creation to the transcendental, that we want to be finally free from this grip of death and suffering, but also from the transcendental to this world, to have a look and see that this world is the becoming of the being, yeah, of the divine being here. And once we see both ways, we are free from this bewilderment. And number 3 is about delivered. Assigning to everything its supernal and real, and not any longer only its present and apparent value, he finds the hidden links and connections. He consciously directs all life and acts to their high and true object, and governs them by the light and power which comes to him from the Godhead within. Thus he escapes from the wrong cognition, the wrong mental and volitional reaction, the wrong sensational reception and impulse, which here originates sin and error and suffering. Some
Vladimir,
mistakes?
I think so, yeah. I
Yeah.
was concerned about where it says when lie, just some that it looks,
Lie doesn't fit
yeah.
here at all.
So let me
yes.
show you
I have to check.
in the readings
Mhm.
from essays on the Gita.
Yeah.
I can show you what
You
I
can
have
read.
here.
You can read that passage, please.
Well, okay, so beginning with all the perplexity,
I will
for
check
all
also.
for all the perplexity of man's mind and action, all the stumblings, insecurity, and affliction of his mind, his will, his ethical turn, his emotional, sensational, and vital urgings can be traced back to the groping and bewildered cognition and volition natural to his sense-obscured mortal mind in the body, samoha. This when lie, that doesn't exist there.
And what is there?
I'm trying,
I think it must,
what you have showing there is too small for me to read without a magnifying glass, so I can't put them side by side, but I can show you on my screen with screen sharing.
Doug, I think it happens because of optical character recognition.
Oh,
yeah.
yes, definitely. There are thousands of
When you
typos
scan
due to that.
document, yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry for this. Yeah, that we have to read the distorted text and guess. By the way, I did this exercise before when we had very bad translation of the essays on the Gita, first what I read into Russian with so many mistakes. And I read with all the mistakes and I was so uplifted. Somehow I didn't mind mistakes. I kind of always found the truth.
Well, that's very
Mistakes could
positive
not,
view.
could not stop
If
me.
you want to do a new version of the Gita to replace Anil Baran's, it would be very much appreciated. Make our lives easier.
Well, I'm sure when it is published in the form of the book, it must
Yeah.
be correct. But this is
Oh,
the imprint from the reading of the PDF or something, or maybe even image text,
yeah.
and that created many mistakes. I'm looking for this part here in chapter 10. I will find it and will tell you what is this, but when lie sees. It's not lie, but something else.
It's he, I believe. It's
Oh, he,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
But when he sees, yes, absolutely. When he sees the divine origin of all things, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Usually this L and I is H, yes.
Okay, I just changed my view so I can see it now. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you. Yeah, we need to correct these things. And it doesn't have, we don't have it here. In this, I don't know why. We don't have these footnotes. All right. So we can proceed. Thank you for correcting. Maharshaya Sapta Purve, the great rishis, the first Purva Rishaya, Chatvaro Manavah Tatha, and four Manavas, four Manos. Yeah? Four Manos and seven first rishis. Madbhava Manasa Jata, they are born of my mind and of my being, Bhava. Yesham Loka Imaf Prajah, of whom these worlds are the offspring. So the great rishis, the seven ancestors or ancient, the seventh ancient of the, what is this?
The ancient world. Let's see.
I world. I don't know what it is. And also the four manos are my mental becomings. From them all are all these living creatures in the world. So, well, we know the text, Sanskrit text, so it's quite easy to correct. 7 rishis, great rishis, and 4 manus also. Madbhava, they are from my becoming. Manasa jata, by my mind they are born. Yesham loka imav prajah, of whom these worlds are coming into being. So as you know that there are always 7 rishis at the beginning of each manvantara. Each manvantara starts with Purva Rishaya, Sapta Rishaya. They bring the Veda to us. So this Veda they bring from the Satya Yuga onwards is the kind of intention of the group soul of humanity. That which has to be remembered what we are here for. So we are here to transform the earthly nature into the divine nature. And that imprint or that Veda, that memory or that intention of the group soul is recorded in the Vedic hymns. And they have to be remembered, and we have to pass them on to future generations, that everybody should remember why we are here, what we are here for. It's quite obvious. If the Veda would not be there, we could just be some kind of, animal beings, living animal life, because there is nothing else for us here to do. But that imprint, that memory has to be intact with the humanity. And so it has to kind of stir the interest, the spiritual interest in man for life. This is how I see Indian civilization, yes? Why that Veda was so important to keep in memory. Why the thousands of generations of Brahmins, millions of Brahmins, learned these Vedas by heart and passed them forward to the future generations. Because this is some kind of, this red thread, golden thread of the whole evolution of consciousness, which is holding it steadily. Even if we forget everything, that Veda will be still generating new scriptures such as Gita, such as Upanishads and Tantra. It will generate the interest, and that interest will come in some form of religions or spiritual traditions.
Sorry, Vladimir.
Mm.
In the book I have of the Bhagavad Gita, with Spanish translation, it's like we jump shloka.
Oh, maybe we jumped over shloka, sorry. Oh yes, also, thank you. I jumped. I just...
Okay, thank you.
Because all right, because of the footnotes which went further away. Buddhir jnanam asammoha kshama satyam damah shamah sukham dukham bhavo bhavo bhayam cha bhayam eva cha ahimsa samata tushtih tapo danam yasho yashaha bhavanti bhava bhutanam matta eva prithag vidhah. So all of these states of consciousness are coming from me, says Krishna. Bhavanti bhava, these states of, these bhavas of all the beings, of bhutanam, matta, from me eva, indeed, prithak vidhah, are born in their particularities, in their separateness. So what are these? This is the whole list here. I can read Sri Aurobindo's translation. Understanding and knowledge. Buddhi jnanam. Freedom from the bewilderment of the ignorance. Asammoho. Forgiveness. Kshama. And truth. Satyam. Self-government. Dhammah. Calm of inner control. Shamah. Sukham dukham. grief and pleasure, coming into being and destruction, bhava, bhavo bhava, bhavach abhavach. So coming into being and destruction, bhayam cha bhayam evacha, fear and fearlessness, most probably that's how we will translate. Yeah, fear and fearlessness, glory and ingloriousness, non-injuring and equality. Let me see what is there. Ahimsa samata. Ahimsa is, as you know, ahimsa, don't need to translate. Samata is sameness, equality. Tushtih, the happiness or rejoicing. Tapach, the tapas, tapasya, or concentration of consciousness. Dhanam, generosity or giving. Yashach, ayashach, fame or glory and ingloriousness. Bhavanti bhava bhutanam. All these states of nature of all the beings are produced from me. Now he gave the list of all possible states of consciousness, and he says that all of them coming from him. And of course, from whom else they could come, these states of consciousness, if not from the consciousness itself. The more I watch movies in this particular state of mind, interestingly, I see that all the movies and all the history is about these states of consciousness being rectified, being kind of experienced, being kind of understood or experienced. It's all about them. Whatever the story. Stories are actually instrumental to the manifestation of these major faculties of which he listed here. Yes? So to experience truthfulness or to experience forgiveness, to experience bewilderment and non-bewilderment and self-realization and understanding and so on, and peace and self-control. And so everything plays in such a way that to give us an opportunity to experience one of these major faculties of consciousness. Quite interesting. We look at them as events, but they are actually instrumental to something more than just these events.
Vladimir,
Yes.
can I say something?
Yes.
It's very curious how, if it's Krishna properly who is talking to Arjuna, it's very interesting how Krishna accepts the duality, and he moved himself to the other perspective and describe the duality, two sides in one.
Agree totally. It's always a surprise, a pleasant surprise, because he includes also ingloriousness and glory, and he includes the defeat and victory. For him, it doesn't matter. It's actually a means for some kind of awareness of the being, These are all means of to become aware that there is the divine behind everything.
It's very empathic. Indeed.
I remember 108 names to Durga. There is a beautiful singing by Joy. You have to listen to them just with understanding of the names. Yeah. And she sings there, Ishvariyai Namaha, and then Anishvariyai Namaha. So to the lady, to the goddess, to the ruling goddess, and to the goddess who is not ruling, who is not in charge of herself also. She is also there in the form Anishvari. Yeah. and they are just one after the other, and you feel so deeply this love for the divine. From this also, that divine took onto itself even that form of being weak, of being lost, of being in the darkness and bewilderment. Yeah, it did. Only the Almighty, all-powerful can do this, says Sri Aurobindo. Nobody can be weak here, only the Almighty. It's quite amazing how we arrive at the recognition of the divine through this quality, you know. So, okay, we can maybe stop here and just generate some discussion, because I'm already taking all the time.
Who was it who sang that 108 names? Was it Anuradha Padwal?
It was Joy singing.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know her.
Okay,
Is
I will
she-
send you the link to this. It's an amazing singing, one of the best ever I heard, and it's done with Holger in Auroville.
Oh,
Holger is a musician. He did in his studio recordings of Joy, singing 108 names to Durga.
Vladimir, could you send that to all of us? to have?
Yes, to all of you, I will send the
Thank you so much.
yes. It's really amazing. Just listen to the names if you understand them in Sanskrit. It's like one of the most beautiful prayer to the mother. Yeah. So,
I
why?
think in,
Yes.
sorry,
Yes. Go ahead.
about the dilemma you mentioned before about how is the approach of anyone, if it's to the mother or if it's to the serial window, I think is influenced in our own projections and in our needs with our parents as well. If we have some loss of mother's relation, maybe we are more attracted with the mother.
Could be.
Or if we had a father's father absentee or for or any absence of father, maybe we are looking for more the
Could be also.
serial window aspect, because we are moving from our projections of necessity, I think.
Could be also from the relations. For example, if you had very good open relations with your father, and then so your father for you makes much more sense.
I think we are trying to fulfill our holes, what we feel empty. I think
Also
this is the
possible.
natural moving, I think.
But you see, empty and full, what we are trying to say, they are all instrumental to something, which we have to realize. Yes, so through that means we either that or denial of that. Even denial of that is the way to realize the divine. That's how beautifully Sri Aurobindo describes India. He says India develops so slow because it accepts all the possible ways to realize the divine. Yeah. So it will accept the denial of the divine and go deeply into that denial until it discovers the truth of it, you know. But even for the denial of the divine is needed, yes. So otherwise, what would you deny? So it's a game which is of the mind. It's instrumental for us to discover the divine in some form, or in some way, to acknowledge its presence. Yeah, but you are looking psychologically. You're trying to bring psychology, modern psychology of this family relation, father, mother, and this Freudian way of looking at things. Well, okay, if it helps, if it gives you a hint, why not? It's instrumental to your discovery or to somebody else. Yeah, some other thoughts maybe. Please share. Don't. What do you think? What do you feel from these verses? Yes, so I wanted to say that all the devatas, all these buddhi, jnanam, these are the faculties of consciousness which are bhavas, the bhavas, the sense or the feelings, the emotions, the real stuff, yeah, the real substance of delight, bhava, comes from the Supreme. They are all his manifestations in this world, and he will reassert this. He will speak about them again during this chapter. Who he is in this world. He is buddhi, understanding. He is jnanam. He is self-realization. It is him. His consciousness acts like this. That's why we want to realize ourselves. That's why we want to understand. Otherwise, why would we want to understand anything?
Is that sort of the mirror image of why the devatas expressed in the literature changed so much between the Vedic times and the Upanishadic or Puranic times? Because the consciousness had changed.
Yeah, we moved into another structure. We spoke about this before. We are now in the mental structure, so we operate by these more abstractions, like knowledge and sense and yeah. And before it was like Indra and Ashwins and Maruts. They were more universal movements of consciousness which were traced to all creatures and beings in the world. Now we are kind of focusing more and more on ourselves and our human psychology. So we kind of name these godheads in terms of personal psychology. They are becoming for us faculties of consciousness.
I'm also a little surprised to see Arjuna sing the names of those devatas in chapter 11. And because he doesn't talk like someone who's really familiar with basic ideas of reincarnation and transmigration. And so Krishna's giving all these very fundamental explanations of how the body leaves, or the soul leaves its body, like casting off worn out clothes. Then Arjuna sees the names of all the devatas as Krishna shows them to him.
Yeah, the Vedic devatas, yes.
Yeah, so how does he know the Vedic devatas?
He saw them there. It was a
Vishwarupa
Darshana.
Somehow he knew their names, or he expressed it. Perhaps the whole thing experienced. That gets to back one of the fundamental dramatic incongruities of the Gita, how they had this 2-hour conversation right before this huge battle with something like 20 million men lined up on opposite sides ready to slay each other.
Oh, you mean that the time has stretched, yes, for 700 shlokas?
Yeah, maybe they, I have one friend from India who thinks they just went into a higher state of consciousness and it all happened in a flash.
I think so. It was like more like a time slowed down, when the divine moment comes, that few seconds, because the arrows were already in the air. Yeah, can you imagine? The armies already started to shoot. Everything already flies, and now he says to Krishna, "Stop my chariot in between two armies. I want to see." And then he sees, and then it starts. So in that moment of time stops, and he receives his initiation.
Yeah. Would you say it's like end of life flashback. And the whole movie of your life pays back for all the significant things.
Truly
A
speaking,
fraction of a second.
Yes, truly speaking, I don't even connect it with physical reality to that extent. Yes, I don't see the necessity even of this connection. It's some kind of more of what he says and in what moment he says. And you cannot really give that depth of knowledge in the word if it would be few words in few seconds. Yeah. So these few words are stretched because our mind operates in time, like it needs the explanation. It needs kind of accumulation of knowledge. So I can, of course, compress that into 1 second, all that, and say in one word. But that means that stretching for our minds to hear it.
Yeah. Well, when people ask a question, a mother has a vision and she tries to explain it in words, she makes it very clear that she has to distort it in a sense, limit the expression, make it much less sensitive and well, it's to deal with the ordinary human mind rather than supermind.
Yes. It's exactly that you need time to explain to the surface mind things which are immediately understood in that compressed one word or one look, And so for that purpose, we have this conversation, for the ordinary mind to reassemble that moment of revelation. It's a very good question. Yeah. So why? How is that even possible? But yeah, I never thought of it in that way. But it's nice. Thank you for forcing. And yes, please go ahead, Deepti.
In the mind of the cells, I think they have mentioned something similar. Is it similar when mother talks about an experience? When she talks about the mind, it's fragmentation and it is in space and time. And when she talks about the experience through the cells, she's talking about an immobility, and there's this line like an infinite immensity of absolute light, and that's the word. And that's not in time and space. So is it the same as what Doug is trying to say?
I think so. Something close or similar, something of the kind that once this moment, a transcendent moment comes, the time stops, as it were. In the movies, they show it like, time is very slow, and then boom, stops. And other beings are moving and doing something and talking, and then time goes again. So this moment of infinity comes, in which the intensity is so huge that our surface mind cannot get, so it needs to stop in order to get all those elements. Well, we know that there are different times. Even vital time is very different from physical. And Gebser, for example, in his book describes different types of time, and time compression. It's quite amazing. He has the whole chapter, Eruption of Time, as if time is a Shakti. And so he speaks about geological time, cosmic time, and our psychological time is very different. Psychological time. 5 minutes could be like infinity, and the whole year could be like 1 second in psychological sense.
When you are living a extreme situation, I like the extreme sports and these activities, then you can have this experience of, in a second, you feel everything is getting slow. Maybe for another one is getting most faster, but your perception is you can catch more details in the same time, and even it's like your mind can accelerate to achieve more experience in the same short time.
Yeah, and it's well-known phenomena. People who were falling from the height and they knew that they are dying, that means this is the end of life. Suddenly the whole life is going through in front of their eyes. How come? The whole life with all the details necessary for them to recapture their meaning of life within a second. That means the intensified perception of the mental activity which can give them slowing time, physical time, but speeding up psychological time. Yeah, correct. I think so. We know very little about ourselves, really, what we are and what time is. And what is time? It's a stretching of some kind of the event of unity in this evolutionary process of becoming. Because there is a space, there is a gap which has to be filled or fulfilled, and all the multitude relations have to be re-established in these infinite varieties and contexts. So because of that we have something which is which we call time, or Shakti. Sri says time is Shakti, which manifests the worlds, kind of spells out the infinite being in all the details and varieties here in front of his own eyes in many-folded creation. So he can look at it from many different angles and experience it in many different forms and varieties. So for that time is pushing forward the space, and it gives us all the panorama of all possible relations.
Well, that's the first word. Time is the first word that Krishna uses to describe himself when Arjuna asks.
Absolutely.
They've been bosom buddies for life, and Arjuna says, I've known you so well, but I don't know you. Who are you in reality? And Krishna says, Kalosme lokakshaya krit pravalho pritam lokan samahartumiha pravritaha. I am time, the all-powerful, who has come to destroy these worlds.
Yeah. He has to explain to him that what he sees, that destruction now which is coming of all these armies, that this time will do, that's the Krishna's will. It is his Shakti, which will do his bidding, his process. And so one should not be afraid of this.
And that ties in very well to Krishna's lesson that you are not the real doer of all these killings. I'm doing it, and it's going to happen whether you play the instrument or not. But be only the instrument, nimitta matra bhava. And that way you can win the glory, and or die and go to heaven. Either way, you're better off. But it's going to happen. So it's not telling that he has to forcefully. He's just saying it's to your advantage to go ahead and do this nasty deed.
It's amazing because we do not see, we think that it is nasty because in that moment of time, of absolute time, it is nasty, killing. But we do not see what is next. We do not see why. So because we do not see the next stage, we think that this is very harmful and we judge the divine for what it is doing. But if we would see what would happen next without it, it would be much worse. Much worse treatment would be needed for this being. So when we see what is next, it's like this anecdote about the white horse, if you remember, yes?
Where's the white horse?
White horse, the story of white horse from Chinese Buddhist story.
Oh, I don't understand.
So there was one poor man living in the mountains, and one day the beautiful white horse came from the mountain to him. And the whole village came to him and said, "Wow, you're so lucky. You got the white horse, such a precious thing." He said, I don't know. Oh, stupid man. He doesn't know where his, happiness is. And then his son was riding that horse, and he fell and he broke his arm. Oh, everybody came to him. Poor you see, this white horse brought you so much trouble. Your son is now suffering. And he said, I don't know. Oh, stupid man, he doesn't know. So then there was the war between the two countries, and all the young men were taken. Only his son was left because he had broken arm. So everybody came to him and, look how lucky you are. Your son is here. So your horse is, and story goes on. I said, I don't know. So because he doesn't see the next stage, doesn't mean that that he should judge every stage for what it is.
Yeah, well, you look at how Krishna presents the consequences to Arjuna. He says you'll either die and go to heaven, or live and enjoy riches on earth. You look at how in the Ramayana, Lakshmana, when Rama and Lakshmi are running the kingdom, they're having, this almost fairy tale outcome to their story. Lakshmana, instead of spending the rest of his life with his beloved wife, who has been serving him all the time by sleeping when he was awake all night. That was another city, I think, where he didn't have to sleep at all, because he could rub Rama's feet all night because his wife was sleeping for him and doing his work that way. It's kind of a good example of the silent influence of a woman who may not be sung in history, but she's doing her duty quietly. But anyway, that's a side story. What Lakshmana did after the war is, instead of going back to Ayodhya to celebrate and live a life of luxury, he went into tapas to atone for the sin of killing Indrajit. So I don't know how long he did it, but it was a very different. He was doing his duty. He did it. He did extremely well. I mean, Indrajit had already defeated both him and Rama, but he teased. After Hanuman saved Lakshmana with a Sanjeevani mountain, the herb. Hanuman said he was fighting Indrajit again. He said, "Now come out like a man and show yourself." And then in what Lakshmana considered a fair fight, where they could see each other, he defeated Indrajit with his arrow. And it's Indrajit was arguably stronger than his father. So it was a huge feat, but Lakshmana had to atone for it in tapas in the mountains.
Yeah, there are many puzzles of this kind. Mahabharata is the greatest puzzle, that all the Pandavas have to go to hell, and except Yudhishthira, who also refused. It's amazing. Something is here inbuilt for us to think forever. Yes, what is going on in our life. And there is no solution. By the way, nobody offered any solution to these puzzles or paradoxes.
Yeah, well, they simply stretch the sense of wonder and imagination, and they also illustrate the difference in duty for different people. What's right for one is wrong for the other.
Yeah. Still, this is all instrumental to the discovery of the divine. Yes. Either hell
Right,
or heaven. It's just the way to know that he is there and be happy with that.
I don't know of any master who makes descent into hell and the salvation of even the gross matter essential to personal and global fulfillment. That it certainly seems to be the primary concern of Sri Aurobindo and the mother in the last years of their human life.
Well, it's a shortcut to heaven, as Sri Aurobindo says. Hell is a shortcut to heaven. It's the way to the divine, actually. Everything is the way to the divine. Everything is instrumental. Yeah? It just intensifies the need of the divine manifestation.
Yeah, and at first it sounds like an extension of being free of all desires, having zero desires. But, and maybe it still is. I mean, the most extreme desire is to not be repelled by hellishness. I mean, how can you imagine? Would any heaven be worth the joy of being equal in intensity to hell? And I think it's easier for most of us to think, no, all the hellfire and brimstone described in the medieval Christian times was so vivid and sordid. Being able to enjoy God's glory was maybe not so intense, but I don't think they had the imagination of the intensity of bliss as well. We just are not capable of handling the intensity of bliss until our nervous systems are very purified, are vital and physical.
I think these states of heaven and hell, they are self-imposed, Well, there is a beautiful movie which is called Lucifer on Netflix. You can watch it. It's a funny movie. I watched it till the end. I was surprised, especially at the end. And Lucifer tells him that everybody is blaming him as if he is imposing all the sufferings of these people in hell. And he says it's not so at all. It is they who do this to themselves. It is them. They believe in this. Their belief is creating that hellish state. It's amazing. I think it's a true revelation in the movie. And the same with heaven. Somewhere, something in us deeply knows the truth and knows what we are doing. And because of this, the projection outside, when we come to the subtle world, is just playing with us, It gives us what we already know. And we build our hell or our heaven. It's not something imposed on us, like we didn't want it. We are good beings, and then suddenly this imposition of darkness or suffering is given to us. Sri Aurobindo says if the psychic being awakened would come to hell, it would see only heaven there. So there is this kind of, if it is already there, it is there. Can't take it away from it.
Well, this goes back to a discussion you had on chapter 2 that I just watched. What happens when all your desires are gone? Does your aspiration kind of take up the gap as your desires are diminishing, as let's say you're moving along quite well in your evolution, and whether it's every minute or every lifetime or every 1,000 lifetimes, your total quantity of desires is less. Is the lack made up by aspiration? And it seems to me that it has to be, but at the same time, there's a very qualitative difference, because the aspiration doesn't fill the mind with thoughts like desires do. And it doesn't attract all these alien formations to come in from outside and possess us as thoughts and desires. The aspiration is quiet, it's patient, it's not insistent. Desires are insistent, they demand fulfillment now. The aspiration will take all the time you want to take and just be as gentle and quiet and subtle, and can't be noticed at all until your mind is very quiet.
Yeah. Right. Siegfried, you wanted to say something, I see.
I think the most faster we can achieve this is Ananda. Ananda, I think, is the most faster we can experience all together. Ananda, to evaluate the existence consciously, and this is you can have already. Depends of you. If you want to have it, you want to accept it, and you think you are allowed to experience these joys, and this is like that. Ananda. That's it. In any situation.
Nice. I believe so, yes. If your inner being would want to have it totally now, in this moment of time, you would have it like this, yes. It all depends on that sincere need of the inner being, and the crust, the wall which we built around us, very thick wall with the mind, with feelings, emotions, fears, dogmas, preferences. All that has to become thinner, 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 and thinner. But again, what I wanted to say, to get rid of desires and to become equal in the mind, is also instrumental. It's an instrumental to something to achieve. It's not the aim in itself. And this is the problem with Buddhism, because they made the instrument the aim. Yeah? Instrument to become totally disinterested. Why disinterested? Because behind that, through that transparent veil, I have to see the truth. That's why. And not because it is, I want to be a vegetable who is not interested in life. Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
Sangeet, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, sorry, I might have missed it. In Sri Aurobindo's, lack of a better word, in his teaching, hell is figurative, or is there, what is hell? I mean, he said, none can reach heaven who has not passed through hell in solitary. What is the, and what is those two words? It's not the Christian word like heaven and hell, right? And Christian biblical meaning, right? Oh, new.
Well, in Hinduism, we have also many, many layers of hell, actually. The stories, first, second, third, 7 stories of hell. So what do you want? Yeah. So the whole skyscraper of hell. Yeah. So there are levels of denial or feeling being kind of bewildered, which is projected by the being and reflected in that surrounding or environment in which it is located in accordance with its own knowledge of what it is, where it belongs. Sometimes there are all possible relations, all possible variations. Some other creatures can also hijack you take you as a prisoner into their, cell, into their domain, and then exhaust you there, torture you there. This can happen also. So one should not exclude, there is no one law for all. Yeah? We are speaking about most general projection that we create for ourselves. The hell we create for ourselves, the heaven, because in accordance with our own understanding of the divine. Yeah? So, but these are instrumental. Both heaven and hell are instrumental to this discovery. Heaven can be a big obstacle in discovery of the divine. Many people, and Krishna says about this in the Gita also, who believe in heaven, they just live for heaven, and that becomes the obstacle in knowing Krishna, in knowing the Supreme. They want pleasures. They want constant security. They work for it. They are ready to be dharmic all the time, And that dharmic behavior is taking them away from the discovery of the truth of their existence. The same as being sinful, both ways. But we can turn these things into the instruments of the discovery and the need of the divine in our life. And that's why he says, Sarva Papa ich vimuchyate. He is liberated by all the papas, by them, not from them.
Well, he also says sarva dharma tyaja.
Sarva dharman parityaja, yes. But
Is it a mental plane, the heaven, or is it a figurative way of saying it? And his hell, in the Puranas, they have 7 stories, 7, 8 stories of hell. One of my relatives always is scared of all those. And so is that figurative, or is that
better not to be scared by those, because you will go there.
But it's actually, these are vital planes or all mental planes, or
These are, of course, lower vital planes, definitely, yes.
Okay.
And one can be trapped there also. Nowadays, it's difficult to be trapped if you don't want to. Yes, it's much easier with Mother and Sri Aurobindo coming here. Mother built the whole tunnel for us where we can protect it in the transition, because that transition is very tricky, where these creatures can attack and take you away from your path to the light. Well, it's a huge topic. There are so many things here. Maybe one day we will tell whatever we know about it, whatever we read, whatever we remember, experienced about these levels of consciousness. But the major thing is to turn everything to the instruments of self-discovery. This is the way how things are done. Everything here is instrumental and helpful for us if we want it to be. Or it can be an obstacle if we want it to be. If we start believing in these instruments as our final aim, as the purpose, the meaning of our life, then of course it becomes something else. It becomes an obstacle. Good or bad. For better or for worse. Okay, all right, I will close with mantra. We're already 30 minutes over. Sorry to be so long. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santo Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. But thank you for your questions. It was lovely to discuss these things. I would love to discuss more and to hear your voices and your interpretations and your understanding also. It's a study group, where we could share our knowledge. Thank you, and see you then next time.